Hello, thank you so much for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguilera. In today's digital world, where large volumes of data are being generated, stored, and processed online, privacy and data protection has become top priority for many countries, businesses, and individuals alike. The Nigerian Data Protection Commission is a supervisory and regulatory authority for data protection in the country. It oversees the implementation of the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023. Now, the NDPA was enacted on June 2023 and has been in effect since then. The Act protects the rights of data subjects by ensuring that personal data is processed in a fair, lawful, and accountable manner. In addition, safeguarding data subjects' fundamental and constitutional rights, freedom, interest, and of course establish an impartial, independent, and effective regulatory body to supervise data controllers and data processors over data protection and privacy issues, which is one of the areas the provisions of the Act provides. Now, prior to the enactment of the Act, there have been attempts towards ensuring that protection of personal data in Nigeria by relevant government agencies. Now, this was done through subsidiary legislation, such as the Nigeria Data Protection Regulation 2019, issued by the National Information Technology Development Agency, that is NITDA. Now, while data protection regulation may have filled some of the gaps, for some time in the country, being a secondary source of law, however, despite noticeable improvement in the data ecosystem, there are still areas that need to be upskilled. 1 year on, the Act is being reviewed, and that's actually our focus on Platform today. Nigeria Data Protection Act, looking at it after 1 year. And our guest is Dr. Vincent Olatunji, National Commissioner and CEO of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. Thank you so much for joining us on Platform.
And thank you for having me here today.
And I remember the last time you were here was sometime last year.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
So we're going to look at the issues. Before we bring in our panelists, let's let you in to who Dr. Olatunji is. Of course, I told you he's the National Commissioner and CEO of the NDPC. He has a doctorate degree in geography and planning and an advanced diploma in computer studies. He is a certified public-private partnership specialist and a PECB certified data protection officer with more than 32 years of working experience in the public sector. Dr. Olatunji served at the National Information Technology Development Agency from 2002, working in different departments and rising to acting director general. That was in 2016. He was the director of Eco-Government Development and Regulations, where he successfully mainstreamed the development and launch of various policies, guidelines, and frameworks: Nigeria Government Enterprise Architecture, Cloud First Policy, Government Digital Service Policy, Nigeria Data Protection Regulation, and Smart Initiatives Framework to enhance Nigeria's digital transformation, and also chaired the implementation committees of some of these institutions I've mentioned. He was listed among the 100 leading telecom and ICT personalities in Nigeria by the Association of Telecommunication Companies of Nigeria. That was in April 2018. Dr. Olatunji is a member of different professional bodies. I'd like to just skip some of those because there's a whole lot he's definitely been doing for himself. All right, our panelist is one of our own, our ICT correspondent, Olajide Bello. Olajide, always nice to have you join us on Platform.
Many thanks to be here, Ruth.
All right. Dr. Olatunji, well, congratulations for your reappointment, so to say. It's not too late, right, to say that?
Not too late.
It's in order.
Yeah.
So when we look at the Data Protection Act 1 year later, you want to, following reports, we've noticed that there's been a lot of improvements talking about the data ecosystem for Nigeria. But you want to tell us how the Act, this is exactly 1 year ago in June, how it has helped to improve the data ecosystem for Nigeria.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm really excited to be here today and to share some of the insights to our activities in the last 1 year when the Act was enacted and now. First, we need to give kudos to Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, who took it upon himself to sign the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023 within 2 weeks of coming to the office. The common thing that you see all over is when a new government comes in and there's an ongoing process by a former government. Usually they kind of jettison the ongoing processes, but in his own case, he saw the light in the importance of data privacy and protection and what that act is going to do in the Nigerian economy in this country. So we need to really give kudos to him. And to a large extent, that has given the work of the commission credibility, because when we were a bureau, there was this problem of legitimacy. A lot of people say, oh, you're just operating without a law. How do you want to actually defend your work? Or you're working with a regulation which may not have international recognition. But with the Act, the position of the Data Protection Authority in Nigeria, which was the bureau then, which has now transitioned to a commission with the Act that was signed by Mr. President, there is that legitimacy, that the instrument of office, instrument to operate as a country. And in terms of recognition within Nigeria and outside, it has given us a lot of mileage. For instance, something as simple as joining the Global Privacy Assembly. Before you could be admitted as a member of the Global Privacy Assembly, you must have a national legislation on data privacy and protection. You must have an independent data protection authority. You must have an enforceable data protection right of data subjects. And we applied as a bureau. Our application was rejected. Well, a month after the Act was signed by Mr. President, immediately we were accepted as, Nigeria was accepted as a member of the Global Privacy Assembly. Now, in terms of enforcing the law itself, through a lot of judicial pronouncements, it has not been properly recognized that Nigeria has a law on data protection and privacy, and there is an institution, an independent data protection authority. In terms of foreign direct investment, a lot of development partners, a lot of countries, a lot of investors, where you don't have a national legislation on data privacy and protection. More importantly, we are talking about digital economy now. They don't want to invest in your country because that trust and confidence, which is the foundation of any digital economy, would not be there, because there will be this doubt that, oh, if anything goes wrong with my transaction, more importantly in the area of my personal identity, where do I go for recourse? Is there any law that could be applied to give me succor? In that sense, we have that in Nigeria now, which we didn't have before. A lot of, in fact, in the area of cross-border transfer of the data, we are talking of international trade, where a lot of data moves from one country to another, or in between different countries. Without the national legislation and DPA, a lot of countries will not give that adequacy position that, yes, in terms of safeguarding the rights, the freedom and the privilege of citizens that transfer the data to your country. That is now happening in Nigeria, because we have that adequacy decision level now, which was not there before. These are some of the things, even in Nigeria, in terms of our interaction with a lot of regulators. Well, part of what we have done is to have a roadmap, and one of the major pillars is to work with partners under cooperation and collaboration. A lot of regulators then visited them, creating awareness. They didn't really see us as but now a commission, they're giving us that respect, and we're working together.
We're going to delve into the issue of the collaboration. You break it down, and the awareness, which is very critical. Let Olatunji come in now.
Okay, many thanks, Ruth. And Dr. Vincent, with like 500,000 data controllers and processors, and with just 10,000 of them licensed or certified, what strategy is the Commission employing to leverage on this wide gap, to create employment based on the vast opportunities embedded in the sector?
Thank you. If you look at Pillar 2 of Mr. President's Renew Hope Agenda, it's about economic growth and job creation. And during the campaign, there was this promise of providing or generating 2 million jobs from the digital economy sector. This is one sector that can generate 500,000 jobs, which we are really alluded to, in the sense that all data controllers and data processors in Nigeria, by Section 34 of the law, must appoint their data protection officers. The data The data protection officer oversees an average organization's data processing activities. Now, for you to be able to do that, you need to be trained, you need to be certified. And the 10,000 figure that you mentioned is about the available data protection officers in the country, certified data protection officers in the country. Now we have identified about 500,000 data controllers and processors, and we have only 10,000 that can work in these organizations. So there is a gap of 490,000. And that's why in our roadmap, Pillar 2 is awareness and human capital development, which is really high on our table. Now what we're trying to do is to develop a pool, train and certify a pool of about 500,000 data protection officers that can work in these different organizations. And we have commenced that process already. The first batch of 1,000 will commence the next 1 month. And we are also encouraging data processors and controllers to train people in this area. And there's also a program currently ongoing under the Federal Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, under the Minister, Dr. Olatunji, is to train 10,000 public servants in responsible data management. That is already going on. We have registered about 5,000, which we are going to divide into 4 cohorts, and there are 3 levels to it, level 1, level 2, level 3, up to level of certification. These are all part of what we are doing to fill that gap. After you have completed your responsible data management course, is that easier for you to go for your training and certification in data profession to be able to service these organizations? And the good thing about it is the fact that you can work in Nigeria and in any part of the world. In terms of principles, in terms of objectives, in terms of the critical areas you need to really evaluate when you want to work as a data protection officer, it's almost the same thing. All you need to do is to adapt to the local laws of any country where you want to work. And even before when we started now, about 4 of our staff have gone to different places to work. That is part of job creation. In addition to that, the licensed DPCOs, these are private sector organizations that are working and carrying out compliance as a service to data controllers and processors. An average DPCO will employ between 5 and 10 staff to work in the organization, depending on the number of data controllers or data processors they are working with. And if you add that to we have registered about 181 DPCOs now, multiplied by 5 or 10. You know what that means?
Okay, because that's where I'm headed. I'm glad you mentioned the data controllers and the data processors, which the guidance notice was issued, for registration early this year. What would you say is the level of compliance? Because if the Act provide that Section 5D, for this registration to be compulsory, what would you say as regards the collection of data, which must be strictly in line with data protection, because data is a very sensitive issue we're talking about here?
Yes, it's the provision of the law that all data controllers and processors must ensure that they comply to. Because if you process data of Nigeria, if there's any itch, if you look at your records of data processing activities, it's called that you have not complied with the provisions by registering with us, by carrying out your compliance audits and submitting the report to us, is a major issue. But if that has happened and there's an accident, to the largest extent, that will reduce the severity of the penalty that such an organization may experience. So what we are trying to do is to create awareness. The level of registration is still poor, that's the truth. But what we are trying to do is to create awareness, let them see the reason why they need to register with us. For instance, when we started with the audit filing, we started with about 630. It increased to 1,270. It increased to 1,777. As a last year, we were doing 3,000. That was for audit filing. But what we have started now is to even have a database of all data controllers and processors in Nigeria. And we are talking of about 500,000 of them. So even at the level of 20% compliance, we have 100,000 in our database. But we are not doing up to 5,000 yet. That means there's still a lot of work for us to do. And that is why awareness is really top on the agenda. And that's why we're working with our regulators to encourage stakeholders within each sector to comply with the provision of the law. So that is awareness drive that is really important to us.
I know Jide wants to come in. Go ahead.
Okay, many thanks, Ruth. Talking about awareness, what strategies is the Commission employing, to get to the grassroots, in terms of those at the grassroots, maybe like through their local government or like liaison officers, because they are also part of your targets, and also they also have data to protect, and they are even the most vulnerable if you're ignorant.
Awareness costs a lot of money. It's really expensive, And what we are trying to leverage on is a partnership with a lot of regulators, with government organizations, with NGOs and so many organizations. And we have visited National Orientation Agency. We are trying to work with them because they are present in all local government areas in Nigeria. And if we work with them, or we use part of the offices to create awareness. In addition to that, we are working on an MOU with the Federal Ministry of Youth in Nigeria, and very soon the MOU will be signed. There's a program they have to train about 5,000 youth in Nigeria, and they will be posted to local government areas. They're going to have the office there. It's part of what we want to do to also create awareness. Also, as part of that MOU with the Federal Ministry of Youth, we are bringing in NYC, National Youth Service Corps, because they post corps members to the remotest part of the country. Yeah. We also want to train them to be able to create awareness. In addition to that, we are trying to even interpret the law to a local three major local languages, Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba. So you have the law in your local language, so people can easily read and understand. Because the most important thing is for data subject, that is you and I, and our people in the rural communities to understand their rights. That the right to be informed when anybody is collecting your data, the right for rectification where there's any error and you need to rectify, right to be forgotten, right of erasure, right of portability. All these are your rights as a data subject.
Even right of access.
Right of access. How many of them know?
Even me, I didn't know until I studied the act.
So we need to really create awareness in this for them to be able to know, oh, these are my rights, which I have the right to exercise when my data is being collected or processed by an organization. So, and awareness is not limited to the Commission alone, or should not be limited to the Commission. Media, we see you as our partners.
NTA explained its part already.
Yes,
that's why you're
absolutely.
Here.
That's why we keep engaging with the media and turning slighted opportunity to ensure that they disseminate information to our people all over the country.
One other critical aspect you talked about, I was going to ask you to follow up earlier, is the non-compliance of these data processors and data controllers. They are the ones who collect data of these citizens. So if they're not complying, what does the Act, provides in terms of penalty? So what is the penalty? Why is nobody going down?
Non-compliance to the provisions of the law on its own is a breach.
Yes.
However, if there are no major breaches or reports, you may be doing it and nothing will happen. But the day that something happens or there's a breach or there's a report or your data processing activity, that's the first thing we look at is, do you even have a record with us? Are you registered with us? Do you have your compliance audit filing with us as a commission regulating data processing in Nigeria? If you don't have, that is a major problem. Well, if these are there, at least 50% of the problem is solved. So maybe by an accident. So the fact that you didn't have it with us may lead to some of these breaches. So anything we see, we now evaluate your total data processing activities. It's just like somebody running traffic lights. You are caught by a traffic warden. The offense is that you have run traffic lights. Now they start asking for your driver license, your vehicle particulars, your spare tires, your jack, your fire executions. So the more of these things that you don't have, the more offenses you have committed, and the higher your fine. So these are some of the things that we check properly, and we look at the severity of the breach, the number of people that the breach has affected, the impact on them, and your cooperation with the commission. If you're investigating you and you think you are too big, they will go all the way to impose the law. But good enough, most of the organizations that we have investigated, none of them has come to us with any form of arrogance that maybe they don't want to comply. They will comply.
But you didn't state what the Act provides as penalty.
No, penalty, it ranges. There is the lowest minimum of 10 million naira, and it can range to up to 2% of your gross earning for the last year. For instance, if an organization made 100 billion last year and there's a breach this year, the law, we can impose a fine of 2%, that is 2 billion on you as an organization. And the good thing again is the fact that if you think, oh, I'm a government official, it's government that will pay the money, there are provisions in law now to even prosecute the CEO of any organization, unless you're able to demonstrate that yes, you have put in place all measures to prevent such breaches, and maybe through other means it happen. If you cannot prove beyond reasonable doubt, as they say in law, that you did not, there was no negligence on your part, that's why you can be exonerated. But upon the fine, we can go ahead and prosecute the CEO of the organization. So there is no escape. And that's how severe it is. And that is why we need to continue to appeal to people. Please, CEO of organizations, because if there's any breach, the CEO is held responsible. And that is why in the law, ideally your data protection officer, which we have mentioned before, should report to you directly on the board. So you have an idea of what is going on in terms of data protection activities. Yeah. So there is no escape for any CEO or any top government official that's in charge of any organization, ministry, department, or agencies of government. Okay. There are provisions for prescription in the law, apart from the fine, about the monetary fine. Even the area of reputational damage to the organization, apart from which is not even the law. There are some banks that, when we started the investigations, by mentioning that we're already investigating them, a lot of people started withdrawing their shares. And that's why I was okay, at this point, don't let us impose fine. We impose remediation fee, we take you through compliance, because our mindset is to have a culture of compliance in Nigeria, not necessarily looking for people that we're going to hammer.
Enforcement, but sometimes you need that.
Yeah, we have to do that. When it's obvious that we have to do it.
Jide.
And that's the next level we're even moving to now.
Okay. All right, talking about penalties, I would rather prefer a preventive measure rather than punitive. You know, there are multiple streams of data collection. Nowadays, you know, you want to write an exam, they collect your data. You want to travel, they collect your data. Yeah. You know, banks collect your data. So is there like a synergy with like a NIMC to see that, you know, after all these data are being collected from the data subject, it is actually being protected, and it's, you know, there wouldn't be any form of loopholes?
I think in terms of protection, that is why number one pillar on our strategic roadmap is governance. That is, as an organization, what kind of governance structure do you have? That is your privacy policy, those in charge of your data processing activities, how do you collect data, how do you share data, how do you save it, who do you share data with, what kind of relationship is between you and your data processor. These are things that are under your governance structure. Now, coming to multiple data sets in the country, government is only working on that. It's saying that there is now a national data harmonization committee looking at how to harmonize data of different organizations so that you don't keep going through the same cycle when you want to obtain a service from many government organizations or whatever. For instance, NIN was meant to be a stopgap. I mean, BVN was meant to be a stopgap to NIN. Because NIN ideally should be your national ID, just like the social security number in the US or national health insurance number in the UK. And this is our own foundational ID. When you are talking of any digital economy, the next thing you're asking about is the digital ID. And your digital ID is your foundational ID in Nigeria. You know that an average Nigeria of transactional age now has an ID, a digital ID, which is the NIN. You want to apply for your driver license, you want to apply for your international passport, right, WAEC, NYC, bank, and all these things. And that is why the synergy that you're talking about.
In primary school now have their name.
Even hospitals. Now the harmonization you're talking about, or the linkage you're talking about, is already happening between NIMC and immigrations. Now, if you want to obtain your international passport, you only give limited amount of information to immigration. The remaining information they pull from NIMC's database through API, which is already connecting them. And that is the level that we are getting to in Nigeria, that all data collecting entities will be able to link up with NIMC through the NIN that is available with NIMC, because that is your foundational ID. You'll be able to pull the one that is usable, that is needed by them, and make use of it. And that is why what NIMC is doing, we need to, all of us need to support it and make it work. But that is what is really identifying us anywhere we get to in the world.
You know, Jide asked about the synergy. What is the synergy?
That is synergy now. For them to be able to work together, you need any information from any citizen, you have the need to be able to contact NIMC and get the information. And it has to be done in a safe and secure manner, in a way that is not exposed to bad actors or those who can use it for any malicious means. Those are the things that we need to put in place. And that's why we keep working with NIMC at every step to see that what they are doing is right and within the provisions of the law.
Dr. Olatunji, the only challenge from what you've been saying, I've heard you talked about, is the non-compliance. But let's look at data privacy breaches. That's a challenge the Commission, I'm sure, is being faced with. When there are breaches of data privacy, I wouldn't want my data to be breached, you know, and we just push out this data at every given time because there must be registration to one thing or the other. So what happens?
Now, in terms of breaches, we've investigated a lot of organizations, over 1,000, but most of them, all the digital lending companies that will give loans to people, start harassing them with the default once or twice. And some major banks, insurance companies, gaming companies, consulting firms, even schools, universities that were investigated. For those that we have completed, what we did was to issue remediation fee, not the fine per se, because we looked at the severity of such breaches and the impact on data subjects. So even from remediation fee alone, we've laid over 400 million naira for government. And we now take them through compliance. We put them, we'll give them the framework we need to follow, working with their DPCOs and their DPOs and their data processing staff, train them, let them understand what it takes to say you have a robust data processing activity in your organization, the records of data processing activities, training of your staff, awareness within the organization, those who collect data, those who process, those who share data, those in charge of your database, proper training for them. Even when you go online to do business with them, the outlook, the look and feel of the website, the privacy policy they are putting there, cookie policy, information security policy, all these things must be clearly stated in the fair, in the straight and transparent manner that an average data subject will be able to read and understand. Because most of these breaches is due to lack of transparency in the data processing activities. That is, telling them openly and making them understand how you want to collect the data, what you want to use the data for, who you want to share the data with, how you want to secure the data, that no bad actor has any access to such information, and not using it for any other purpose, apart from the purpose for which you have collected such information for. These are things around the breaches that we have investigated, not in terms of huge financial loss to individuals. Although there are some maybe in terms of the process of registering for NIN, a fellow was captured as a male, as a female. And with that, he couldn't have access to a lot of services in terms of banking, even his international passport, driver license. That was on for like 9 months until it came to us. Eventually, we solved it, and we told the bank to compensate the data subject. And the thing was rectified by NDPC within a very short time. So these are some of the things that we'll be seeing here and there.
So individuals can come to the commission when they have
Yes, it's part of your right, which we have added. This right is not part globally, it's not part of what you normally had. But in our act, right of data subject to report to the commission.
Data breach.
If there's a breach or misuse of your data, anything that you think is not right about your data, it's your right to report to Nigerian Data Protection Commission. I will take it up immediately.
All right, let me say one of the measures being put in place by the Ministry of Innovation and Digital Technology is that there was a strategic roadmap on AI. And this is meant to address the issue of, cloning and, like identity theft. Yeah. Now, I want to pose this question. How far has this strategic roadmap gone, and how is it going to help in, ensuring that certain artificial intelligence apps are not just, up for sales anywhere, and to protect people's data and identity?
AI is one of the emerging technologies taking over the digital economy across the globe and the way we do things and operate.
Okay, Dr. Olatunji, can you just hold that thought for me?
Okay.
We have to take a break. Ponder on it. We'll be back shortly. Please don't go anywhere.
What are we doing as a nation to, first of all, settle our teeming populace, especially
NTA's political package with a third eye on the nation's political scene? I am Fisa Ogunfuyi. Welcome.
You have to be very careful giving space to people who are obviously sponsored to further the agenda of some other groups.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions in a closed door sessions. Some of these issues, some of the problems bedeviling of their.
In fact, between June 1st
And July 17, 19 point something billion has left the coffers of the NDPC.
I can say my constituency, they need everything because we don't have anything.
A method for digital literacy is a bot that you can use, you can interact to learn more about digital literacy.
Hello, it's our pleasure to have you join us on platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele.
What is the yardstick for measuring everybody's moral integrity? It's critical at this point in time.
How daunting has that been for the Institute in getting them abreast with all the legislative procedures?
The fact remains that one training workshop is not enough.
Thank you for staying tuned. The conversation is on Nigeria's Data Protection Act. We're looking at the review 1 year after. Dr. Olatunji Olajide asked the question on leveraging AI, to advance certain areas.
Yes, I was saying that AI is one of emerging technologies that a lot of data privacy laws, those who are enacted before us, they really take cognizance of them, that things will be like this now, because those who enacted the law 10, 15 years ago, there was not like emerging technologies. But the approach that and Africa as of today, about 7 countries that developed their AI strategies. But in terms of legislation, there is none to drive it. And that is why we are lucky, and our law in Nigeria has been referred to as the most progressive globally, because we're already taking precautions to take care of emerging technologies because of the fact that it's new. Now, the approach by Nigeria under the leadership of the Minister of Communications and Innovation and Technology, Dr. Olatunji Tijani, is co-creation. Bringing people from all areas, experts in AI strategy all over the world. And they were here for 1 week in Nigeria. So there are a lot of inputs from a lot of people to look at our peculiarity in Nigeria, our cultural level of the deployment of technologies, and the knowledge of AI in the country. So now we have a strategy on AI. The next phase will not be implementation. But where you look at the issue of privacy is the fact that most of these emerging technologies, including AI, blockchain, and so on, they are immutable. They are mostly when you put your personal information or personal data, to change them, to rectify them, to release them is usually difficult. And that is why we now talk about data privacy by design and by default. And the law empowers us in Nigeria to legislate in the area of emerging technologies. In some countries, before they can actually legislate in any area, they have to go back to parliament. But our own law empowers us to legislate. We subject it through our rulemaking process, and it stands. And that's part of what we are promoting now, is privacy by design and by default. So right from the moment, the ideation stage, they are contemplating your solution. We're already thinking of compliance with data privacy law. Even last year, early this year, when we did the privacy week, and there was this hackathon that we organized. One of the solutions that came out was on data privacy by design and default. One of the schools that participated, and they're already undergoing mentoring now, which can be used in Nigeria and other part of the world. So we have the power to legislate this year to ensure that we do the right thing in Nigeria. And the methodology adopted by the minister in terms of co-creation to a large extent has really assisted us, the country. The next phase is not to just start the implementation. I think the strategy itself is ready.
Interesting. And what I find fascinating about the Act is that when it was, signed into law last year, it was meant to codify and introduce a form of structure, which we're already seeing that is in place. But you talked about data management and the trainings ongoing and all of that to improve capacity. But can the Commission handle it on its own? Are you looking at partnerships with other, development partners, maybe international communities or other countries?
Yes, the partnership with stakeholders within and outside the country is huge on our agenda. And that's why right from the beginning, in terms of compliance, we have been licensing DPCOs. And in the area of training, is mainly the work of the DPCOs.
When you say DPCOs, we that were not ICT inclined.
Data protection compliance organizations. What they do is to offer compliance as a service to data controllers and processors. And part of their services now is training. And even the process that we have put in place in Nigeria to have a national certification process. Your writing external exams can be expensive. I wrote my own with about $1,000. I maintain with about $100 every year. That's about 1.6 million. How many people can afford that in Nigeria? So we will now have a national certification process as DPCOs that will train those who write the exams. And the same thing with this responsive data management course is being handled by data.org. It's the globally recognized training institute in the area of data. And it was actually facilitated by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Olatunji, and that's why we are trying to train about 10,000 Nigerians. And with this, it's just like laying the foundation for responsible data management, that if you are responsible for data management in your organization, there are some basic things you need to know. And you can now do up to the level of certification, and they can now come for the DPO certification or data privacy certification, which we're also putting in place. So it's like bringing everything together. And by the way, on the AI and strategy that we mentioned, Nigeria will be hosting NATPA this year. The focus is on data privacy and artificial intelligence. Bring all African countries together to look at where we are in Africa and where we are headed as a continent, on the way we are using AI, the place of privacy and protection there.
And that's the All African Data Protection
Authorities.
Commissions. And we hear about 30 countries will be participating. And it's good news and highly commendable for the commission that Nigeria has been given the hosting rights. And you want to quickly just tell us what to expect there?
Yeah, thank you. NATPA, that's the network of African Data Protection Authorities. It's made of, as I mentioned, made of about 30 African countries with their national legislations on data protection and with their independent data protection authorities. We meet on an annual basis to look at activities in the different countries for peer review and to look at Africa as a continent. Where are we in terms of data privacy and protection? Where are we headed? What strategies do we need to put in place to ensure that in terms of continental approach to data protection and privacy, that protect the interests of our people, about 1.4 million people in 54 countries. This is the whole essence. And for us to be relevant and speak with one voice in the global privacy ecosystem. For instance, the strength of GDPR in the EU, because 27 countries came together to support that law and make that law. And there are just about 447 million people. Unlike our own, we're about 1.4 billion people. Huge population. So it's like bringing all of us together. So on an annual basis, we meet to look at activities. And as a country, if you're a member and they've seen progress, traction in what you are doing in your country, you have to bid for you to be given the hosting rights. So we did it this year. And we won the hosting rights at the last meeting in Nairobi. So about 30 countries will be coming to Nigeria for that meeting, and development partners are coming, investors are coming. It's like bringing the whole world in data privacy ecosystem to Nigeria.
Wow.
They will be here for 4 days and speak a lot to the value that we have added to the global privacy ecosystem that is Nigeria, and the respect that we've gained within the last 1 year of having this law, and it speaks to even our tourism, our culture, the narratives about Nigeria, perception about Nigeria, that's bringing a lot of people. You can imagine what we do to our hotel and hospitality industry. It's huge. And that's why we've been discovering a lot of development partners, organizations to partner with us for us to be able to have a successful hosting of all the African countries and, by extension, the international community in the global privacy space. So it's like bringing all of them together in one room to deliver, and it's huge for investors, for development partners, for those who want to do one thing or the other in African countries. You can imagine traveling to about 30, 50 African countries, and we are now bringing all of them in the room for investors. So it's huge for us, and we are going to work with all partners to ensure that we make it a success for the country.
All right, still talking about the hosting of the meeting next year. What is the commission doing to ensure that, one key word that you always use is trust, to ensure that once they come, they see the trust, and it will bring a ripple effect in terms of foreign direct investment?
Yeah, it's all about planning, involving all the necessary stakeholders, because the moment we want it, when I'll keep telling people that it's not about the commission. Now it's a Nigerian thing. And As many organizations we feel are relevant, we're going to involve them in the private sector, in the public sector, ministry, department, and agencies of government that we think are relevant to what we are doing. For instance, if we are doing such a thing, the tourism and culture ministry, they have a role to play. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they have a role to play. Immigration, for instance, they have a role to play. NTA, they have a role to play. Investors, multinationals, development partners, all of them, even ECOWAS. When we look at Nigeria, West Africa, before the whole of Africa, all of us we have rules of play. And that's why we have started engaging with proposed partners who work with us to make it happen. It's not about NDPC alone now. It's about Nigeria and what we can offer the whole world. So it's big. So it's not so proper planning, and that's why we have started the planning immediately after we came back. We even met with the board of NATPA last week, Saturday. Last week, the last public holiday, we were working. We met with them, we met the board, and a lot of things are already coming. The theme, which I said is all about artificial intelligence and data privacy in Africa. Look at where we are and what we need to do.
Okay, we expect positive outcome when the time comes. But let's turn our attention to the issues on ground. Yes. The Commission, I understand, partners with the CBN, SMEDAN. Earlier we talked about job creation. Jide asked the question about job creation, and we know these are institutes, or rather organizations that collect data, or they work with other bodies that collect data for interventions, especially SMEDAN and even the CBN you collaborate with. How is the Commission ensuring that there is total compliance as to when they collect this data from citizens for the purpose of interventions, they are being secured?
In terms of compliance, the regulators are more likely to encourage their stakeholders or players in each sector to comply than for us, just you must comply. So the approach is, who are the regulators for each sector that we need to work with? 3, we are going to develop sectoral guidelines to make it simple and straightforward for each sector. For instance, the parameters that we evaluate when carrying out compliance on this now is about 67. A lot of organizations don't need up to 67. If you are in medical sector, and the kind of data they collect is even, we refer to it as sensitive data, you don't need up to 25-30 questions to run through your data processing activity. If you are in a Greek, if you are in net, so there may be different parameters. So these are the things that we have laid down. Now, what we have been doing is to work with regulators for each of these sectors to even develop MOU with them, to guide the way we work with them, to implement, to deepen data privacy and protection in the area. For instance, we have an existing MOU with FCCPC, that's the Federal Consumer Competition Protection Commission. Yeah. We have a MOU with SMEDAN. For SMEDAN, there are about 40 million SMEs that collect and process data of Nigerians. You can imagine how massive that is.
That's why regulation is key.
Yes, we have one with Lottery Commission. About 60 million Nigerians are into one gaming or the other every month. You know how huge that is. I mentioned that we're already working with the Ministry of Youth. You can imagine the number of youth in the country. NYC. So these are things that we are trying to do to ensure that regulators for each other, even CBN, we have an existing working relationship with them. And that was that even last year, during our privacy, what we review our data compliance level last year, CBN won the most compliant public sector organization, Central Bank of Nigeria. We got a level of compliance which is high on the agenda. For instance, if you just go to the financial sector, you must comply. Without involving CBN, there will be a problem. Even how about insurance? We're already working with NICOM. We'll be seeing them very soon. We were there last year, but we are going back to ensure that we have an MOU for insurance sector to comply. How about hospital management? There's this hospital records management board. We're already working with them. A lot of organizations like that. We believe the best thing is to look at the regulators. They know, understand the mindset of their stakeholders. They are the ones that will push them to even comply.
So the regulators, if I understand, they fall under the data controllers.
They are data controllers. They determine the way marathon data is being used. Even for telcos now, look at NCC. We are even under the same ministry. So all the telcos, NCC will have to let them know what to do. You understand what I'm saying? So That's why it's really important for them to understand what we are doing, and they will now encourage their data processors or data controllers to comply with the provisions of the law.
Okay, Doctor, how does the Nigeria Data Protection Act address international transfers? Because of, you talked about 30 countries now coming together. Is there like a synergy and the exchange of, maybe responsibilities when it's across borders?
Yeah, if you look at Part 8 of our law, it's all about cross-border transfer of data. And for us as a commission, we have the power on adequacy decision on which country data of Nigeria has been transferred to look at the level of adequacy in terms of security of such law, of such data, in terms of trust and confidence in our system. And there are some parameters we need to evaluate in terms of enforceable data subject rights in the country. Look at national and enforceable data protection law, which is really important to look at business corporate existence of an independent data protection authority, that is NDPC in Nigeria's case. Look at business corporate rules, which may be for multinationals. Look at standard subcontracting clauses, which may also be for companies. Look at different certifications that you may want to use. These are things that I look at to determine adequacy level for any country where your data is being transferred to. And for business corporate rules for organizations, for private sector organizations, before that is done, you need to bring it to the commission to review that, yes, where you are transferring the data of these Nigerians to, that we can take adequacy decision to say, okay, they have adequacy in terms of securing such data, and that we have trust, we have confidence. We need to give you a pass mark on that before you can even transfer such data. And for countries within NATPA, yes, there's a working relationship. And even at the level of African Union now, we are trying to see what we can do together to have a kind of synergy in our laws. Yes, we can have your local laws, but not that you come to Nigeria, obey one law, you go to Ghana, obey another one, you go to South Africa, obey another. We are trying to have a synergy now where all of us could work together. Even at the level of the Global Privacy Assembly, which is made up of 30 countries. These are some of the things that we're trying to look at. How do we even enforce the law in this country? For instance, the territorial scope in our law under Section 2 is that if you're a data controller or a data processor, you are domiciled in Nigeria, you are within scope. If you're a data controller or data processor, you are not domiciled in Nigeria, but you process the data of Nigeria, you are within scope. The question is, how do you want to enforce this law in your foreign land?
Okay, Dr. Olatunji,
part of what we've done.
We have to wrap up this conversation, but I want to hear the vision from you. I know you're putting in a lot, to ensure that the rights of data protection for citizens are well secured. What is the vision? What do you envisage?
Yeah, the vision is what you have said, to have a system where every data subject will have trust and confidence in the digital economy. That yes, my data with controller A, processor B is safe and secured. And have a country with a culture of compliance. As a data controller, a data processor, we don't need to run after you before you know you should comply with the provisions of the law. It will be part of your daily activity, as if you are eating or you are breathing air. It will be part of you. Oh, we need to protect the data under our custody. That is the vision, and that's where we want to take Nigeria to very soon by the grace of God, and with all of us working together as our partners.
And we must commend the commission. We hear 10 billion naira has been, gotten from this whole ecosystem, data ecosystem.
Yes.
That is huge.
Yes.
Well done.
Thank you.
All right, and that's where we end this conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Vincent Olatunji. He's the National Commissioner and CEO of the Nigeria Data Protection Commission. Thank you so much for coming on platform. Keep up the good work. We'll monitor the data. Okay.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Olajide Bello, our ICT correspondent here in NTA. Thank you so much, Olajide, for contributing your own data to the program.
Many thanks, Ruth. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Okay, and there you have it, Nigeria Data Protection Act, 1 year after. It is your right to access. It is your right to be forgotten. Just want to add this one. It is your right to ask questions what your data is being used for, and that's platform. I'm Ruth Aguwele. Bye.